I today am setting up to paint a little bit more of my painting. I haven't worked on it in forever, but I made this grass probably last year, and I recently quit my job, so I am trying to figure out life. I'm trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing with myself, and I figured I'd make a little video as I go because I don't know why. It seems like the thing to do these days. I'm just trying to find my image that I was working on. This is a picture of the Cliffs of Moher that I took many years ago, and it is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my entire life, and I kind of think of it as like a happy place in my head. So I wanna paint it because I really loved being there, and I really loved how it made me feel to experience this beautiful place. So I'm just gonna paint today and try to make a little video out of it, and maybe I'll make more videos while I'm not employed. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. I'm just taking a break from capitalism is what I'm doing. I can't do it anymore. Yeah, I don't need to explain myself. Anyway, my palette is a paper plate, and I'm just gonna paint my beautiful Cliffs of Moher. If you've ever seen those memes, they're like, your unemployed friend on a Tuesday. It is, in fact, 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I am painting some rocks. I'm also trying to exercise my free will a little more. I recently realized I can do whatever No, I am just kidding. I always knew I could do whatever I want, but I think I lived a life of pleasing others for quite a long time, and I'm just ready to do things that I want to do instead of forcing myself to take the shape of what I think will make people happy. I saw this, or heard this amazing quote the other day, and it was, in order to do something that's never been done, you have to be someone you've never been, and I love that. So my resolution for this year has been to be myself. Which sounds so sad when you think about it, but I've spent so many years running away from myself in my teen years, healing myself in my 20s, and now that I'm in my 30s, I'm finally ready to just let myself experience my life and what makes me happy without the entire need of pleasing my friends, pleasing my parents, my sisters, my boss. I'm just so ready to just see what makes me happy. So yeah, my resolution was to be more myself. Just let myself be. And I've just been experiencing the first, I guess this is the third week of unemployed life. I've got to stop saying unemployed life. I'm employing a new modality in my life. I'm escaping capitalism. I don't know if that's the right way to say it either, but I am just pursuing a life that I deem worth living. I think what inspired this a lot too is last year I was really, and I have so much lore. My fiance always says I'm like very introverted and I don't like to talk about myself very much, so this is like very new for me to just make a video to talk and paint. But I have so much lore, so I can always talk more about my history if you would like to hear, whoever's listening. But this past 2 years, I want to say, have been some of the most challenging mental health years of my entire life. Like, and I have been through some heavy chapters of mental health, and it was a really hard one. I actually really struggled with thoughts of no longer being here, which I hadn't ever had that before. And I think that's what's kind of in this year starting to motivate me to really say, like, hey, wait, you can't just go down this path that you think other people will approve of. you have to like your life. You can't just do things to be successful or to make money and be well off and be able to retire early. I mean, nothing wrong with that. I wish I could do that. I tried to do that, but I hated it. I hated my life. So I needed to do this for me so that I can stay, so that I can keep choosing life each day. And I want to have a family. I want to like be here for a long time. So I'm taking a moment. I'm going to cry if I keep talking about this. I'm just taking a moment to see if I can figure out what life looks like when Donna deems it worth living. Because if I want to have a child one day, I want to be a good example to them. I don't want them to feel the feelings that I felt, the pain that I felt. I would never want anyone to feel that. And I just trying something new. Just trying to be a new version of me. Or rather, a truer version of me. Maybe it's not new. Maybe it's just, this has always been me and I haven't let her just exist. I'm a big reader, so I won't lie, all this time to be able to just have the freedom of my time is so new. I've been reading so much. I think I've already read like 10 books this year. Some crazy fun number. And I'm really enjoying this new book I've been reading by Rick Rubin, who is a music producer. He's very famous. And he wrote this book called The Creative Act, which I've read a similar book before. Not a similar book, but sort of in the same theme, which was called Letters to a Young Poet. And I adore that book. I don't own a copy, but I really would love to just find one day. But yeah, so I've been reading The Creative Act, and I think it helped me in this phase of life, especially as I'm embracing new ways of being myself. It helped me just see that there is a path that exists where you are in commune with the energy of the universe, and you are collaboratively co-creating with the energy around you, allowing inspiration and creativity to move through you. And I have always been such a spiritual person. I think I really started to embrace it a lot more in my early 20s and allowed myself to really explore what an individual path of spirituality might look like, instead of trying to mold myself into these kind of organized religion, traditional ways of worship that I didn't grow up with. I actually really commend my parents. They both were raised Catholics, but they both decided to consciously make the decision to not raise us, me and my sisters, Catholic. And so in a way, I resented it as a teenager. I was kind of jealous of my friends that had grown up going to church on holidays and had a really clear path to God and worship, and I didn't have that. And I really felt like I needed God in my life, especially in my early 20s and teen years. I really needed God, and I still prayed and I still sought out divine guidance, but I started kind of creating my own path of communicating with a higher power. And I don't know much about religion, but I do know, like, I do have faith in something bigger than me, and I do definitely still try to walk in a path that is filled with light and benefits the world around me and serves the greater good. And so, yes, it's not called, Christianity or there's no name for what I am doing, but I guess spiritual is the closest I've come to feeling like a word describes how I feel about the world around me. And hopefully that's okay. I know that that's like not a traditional path of existing in the world, but that's my path, and I just never grew up with something different than me figuring it out for myself. So I read a lot of religious books growing up just to figure out what it's all about, especially Buddhist books and Eastern religions. I was very curious about, I think because I was always very fascinated with philosophy, and I learned early on that a lot of our philosophers that we know and love had studied Eastern religions and philosophies, and some of their most well-known concepts were actually inspired by Eastern philosophies. And so one of my favorite philosophers, who I always go back to this day, is Alan Watts. And so I learned that he was also inspired by Eastern religions. And so I read some books by the Dalai Lama, the 14th Dalai Lama, His Holiness. Around the same time, I read a book by, I believe he's American or British, but he basically westernized the concept of reincarnation, which fascinates me. So then I pursued reading My Land and My People, because I read Many Lives, Many Masters, which was about past life regression, and reading about reincarnation in the context of Tibetan Buddhism was so fascinating to me. And I, to this day, do believe that, reincarnation could be possible, and, our spirits here are having a human experience, but that doesn't mean that this was the beginning of the end of our souls, which I think is so fascinating. And I actually did a painting a long time ago, not a long time, 5 years ago, about the Buddhist concept of reincarnation. And so it was all about how, the probability of a soul being incarnated as a human is the probability equal to a turtle swimming in the ocean, swimming up to the surface of the water and perfectly swimming into a hoop in the water. And I love that, because it really frames our human experience as something to be treasured and something so special. And for me, treating my life as something extraordinary and special and like such a gift is the thing that has helped me survive so many difficult periods of my life. So I highly recommend just pursuing what interests you and what makes you curious, because researching organized religion and finding how others kind of look at the world around us through a divine lens can really help you fall back in love with your life. And it has for me. And now that I'm in this weird new phase of seeing if there is a path to a life different than I've chosen so far, it's helped me remember who I am, fall back in love with who I am, and also just remember that this is my one beautiful, extraordinary life, and I want to make sure I experience it in a way that I'll look back on with so much love and fondness. I don't want to be sitting on an airplane flying every week away from my loved ones to help make money for the private equity industry that I do believe is one of the worst parts about our financial economy. I have a lot of thoughts about finance, and I can obviously dive into it more in another video at another time, but I'm very happy to be exiting an industry that did not serve me, exiting a job that was not the right fit for me. Wow, I would love to add some texture to these cliffs, but I really like how they're coming out so far. I just want to continue to make sure that they get the texture they need, but I do want to wait a little as I keep going. Oh, I love it. Just darkening up, especially the seams of the cliffs, if that makes sense, where the cliffs kind of step in at each different layer. I want to just make sure they look a little darker so that you can tell there's some depth in this. And I do like how the lines of the paint are helping with that. Anyway, I'm going to keep painting for a little bit. I'm going to turn these off.